Hello, Wheel of Time family, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I think I'm going to take a pass on that question.
Yeah. In the immortal words of the bard, Smash Mouth, my world's on fire. How about yours?
That is not the way I like it.
Yeah. It's, what is today? Is today June 3rd?
Yes, it is.
Today is June 3rd. And things here in America are looking pretty rough.
Yeah, they're not good right now.
It's pretty rough. Coronavirus is still sweeping the nation, and our numbers are, in some places, are getting better. Some places are getting worse. We've got protests all over the place. We've got some riots. We've got
military deployed.
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now, and I mean, it's rough. It's real rough. But
we are doing okay.
Yeah, we're doing okay. And we just want to say, I hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope everyone is getting involved as their heart is leading them.
Yes.
We know that there, a lot of people being moved into action, not just here in America, but across the world. I've seen protests, footage in protests in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in the UK, like all over the place. So, the world climate is changing, hopefully for the better. And, just get involved, donate. There's all sorts of different organizations, from bail fundings and all sorts of things. So just go with your heart, and hopefully the dark days we'll get past them soon and move into
something new.
Yeah, a better world.
A better world, yeah.
But in the meantime, let's take a short break from the world around us and dig into Robert Jordan's world.
I like that plan. Let's do that.
All right. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today, we're going to be discussing chapters 3 and 4 of The Shadow Rising, where everyone is trying to pull Rand in different directions, but at least Thom is pulling strings in the shadows on Rand's behalf. Chapter 3 is called Reflections, and the icon is the Dragon Fang.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Perrin and Vale head through the stone towards Rand's room. As they pass defenders and servants, Perrin tries to hide his golden eyes because he doesn't like the fearful looks he's getting. They run into High Lord Torian and two of his bodyguards snooping. Perrin does not like the way Torian is looking at Vale and gives Torian a biting comment that sends the man on his way. Vale chastises him for being rude, saying that if he intends to stay in the stone, he will need to get along with the lords. When he tells her that he didn't appreciate Torian eyeing her like that, Vale tells Perrin that she can handle herself and doesn't need his protection. He remarks that the bodyguards didn't take their hands off of their swords until they were well past the two of them, and they wonder if feelings about the dragon and his friends have shifted. Before they reach the end of the hallway, they meet Berlain practically running out of Rand's room. Trying to prove to Vale that he could be civil, Perrin swept a deep bow, but Vale barely dips her knee. Perrin misses this as he registers that Berlain smells absolutely terrified. He stares after her, and Vale asks softly if he's done filling his eyes. He starts to explain, but sees Torian grab Berlain and speak harshly to her. Perrin overhears that she has overstepped in her pride, and Torian offers protection, but Berlain tears her arm free and stalks off. Vale tells Perrin that Berlain is not interested in hunting a bear, that she hunts the sun, but Perrin has no idea what she's talking about. Vale decides not to go on with Perrin after all, saying that he and Rand will have much to discuss, especially if there is wine, and Perrin still isn't catching her drift. She softens at his cluelessness and tells him that it is his innocence that she loves most. Vale goes to bed, and Perrin heads into the anteroom of Rand's chambers. Perrin breezes by the 50 defenders to the real guards protecting Rand, 6 maidens of the spear. Bane stops him, saying that she thinks Rand wants to be alone tonight. Perrin tells her that he is going in and takes her by the upper arms. Bane puts a spear point to one side of his neck, and Chiad had one of her spears on the other side. He tells Bane that he doesn't have time to argue, but he has to go in. As gently as he could, he picked Bane up and set her out of his way. Bane is startled, but abruptly grins and pulls back her spear point, asking Perrin if he wants to play a game called Maiden's Kiss. Chiad pulled her spear away too, and they let him pass. Perrin is shocked by the wreckage in the room and the sight of Rand sitting limply, covered in blood, with Calendar across his knees. He shouts at the maidens to get Moraine and to hurry. Rand tells him to shut the door. Perrin tried to staunch the bleeding of the wound in Rand's side, but the cloth soaks through immediately. Perrin asks what the hell Rand was trying to do, and that he almost killed him as well. Rand explains that it wasn't him. It must have been the Forsaken. Perrin asks what Rand is going to do, and Rand tells him whatever everyone least expects. Ruark comes in, complaining that the foolish Tarian officer sent word to his commanders that something went down in Rand's room, and now rumors were flying all over the stone. He met up with Berlaine, and she told him the truth of what happened. Rand laughs that he told her not to say anything and that it looks like the dragon doesn't rule Mayene. Ruark assures him that she won't tell anyone else. It looked like she would rather forget everything that happened. Moraine comes in demanding answers, and Lan quips that he thought Rand was old enough to avoid cutting himself while shaving. Ruark chimes in as well. Rand is young yet, and the two men grudgingly smile at the other's joke. Moraine is not amused. She tells Rand that the story can wait until after the healing and to touch the source. Rand wants to know why, and for a second, Moraine looks like she's going to explode all over him. But she reins it in and explains that if he can use the power to replace what is taken from him when healed, it will mean much less exhaustion afterwards, so he can be on his feet tomorrow. But Rand can't gather himself enough to reach the source, so Moraine heals him the old way. It's violent and painful, with chunks of dried blood and bits of glass raining down from him onto the floor. When it was over, Moraine tried to take Calendar from him to replace it on its stand, but Rand jerks it away from her. Irritated, she turns to examine the wound in his side. The wound was a tender scar again, but Moraine mutters about how it will not heal completely. Rand asks her if that's the wound that will kill him, and quotes, "His blood on the rocks of Shale Ghul, washing away the shadow, sacrifice for man's salvation." Moraine snaps at him that he reads too much and understands too little, but Lan defends Rand, saying that he's only trying to find his way. Perrin is surprised, but then again, Lan and Rand have spent a great deal of time together practicing the swords. Moraine is not pleased, but turns her attention to the room, saying Rand needs sleep, and tells Lan to ask for a new room to be prepared. Rand refuses to move, saying that he won't be chased anymore, not even out of bed. Lan murmurs Taishar Manatharan, and even Ruark looks startled. Moraine is staring thunderheads at Rand while Perrin inches toward the door. Moraine commands them to stay where they are. She calls Rand stubborn and tells him that if he's going to stand there until he passes out, then he can tell her exactly what he did. So maybe she can see where he went wrong and lost control of the power. Rand says that he did nothing wrong and explains what happened. He asks if Samel could reach him from Ilion, but Moraine says not even with Calendar. Rand figures that one of the Forsaken has to be in the city then, but Moraine disagrees. She theorizes that as the seals on the Dark One's prison weaken, bubbles of evil are going to start popping up. Tavren will probably attract these bubbles more often than most people. They ask about Matt and if he's okay. Ruark tells them that he saw Matt heading to the servants' quarters when he was on his way to Rand's room. Ruark told her Matt was headed away from the stables and that there were no boats currently docked at the river. Moraine tells Rand that he needs to hurry up with his plans. It was getting too dangerous to wait, but Rand tells her that he will not be rushed by her. She tells him that he needs her help, and he responds that what he does will be his decision. He tells everyone to leave because he needs sleep. Exiting the room, Perrin comments to Ruark that the Ale do not bow and scrape for Rand the way the Terrans do, or call him Lord Dragon. Ruark tells him that the dragon is a wetlander prophecy. The Ale search for he who comes with dawn. There were certain things Rand still needed to do to prove that he was the one. Perrin worries what will happen if they decide Rand is not this Dawn person and thinks that he needs to get Fail out of the stone as soon as possible. And he had to make sure she would decide to leave without him.
Perrin has always been one of my favorites, and mostly because he takes the time to think about how he should react to do something. Mm-hmm. When possible, he looks at his options, he makes the best decision that he can, and he sticks with it once he's set on a course. However, he can be really dense at times. Mm-hmm. This whole Fail's father is a merchant thing is really a lame cover story that he should be able to see through. I used to think that this was just because Jordan was playing stereotypes and Perrin as the big, strong blacksmith was wise, but not necessarily smart. But I thought of something recently that I want to kind of bounce off you and see if it rings true.
Okay.
What if Perrin can see through it just fine? What if Perrin knows that she's bending the truth about who her father is and where she's from? Is it possible that he knows that she is at least some kind of noble and wants to let her pretend to be that she's not because of the prejudice that he's been raised with regarding nobles? Do you think Perrin might be subconsciously pretending to buy the "my father is a merchant" story because he knows that he loves her and does not want that to come between them?
I'm not sure if he has already caught on that she's not being honest. Eventually he figures it out because she keeps changing her story.
Sure.
And, that he's a fur trader and then he sells ice peppers and like some other things. But I can't remember when he realizes that she's hiding something. She does eventually tell him the truth later on in this book, chapter 41, I think. So he might be starting to catch on at this point, but
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So you think I'm just trying to put too much into it? Because I might be. I tend to do that.
Yeah, I don't think he's letting her pretend because of like prejudice against nobles or cultural stuff like that.
Okay.
I do think that he's suspicious because, again, her story keeps changing and he's like, there's something going on here. And she knows
fishy.
too much about how things work inside of like palaces and the stone. And, I know this about servants and I know this about,
Right.
but like, so he's questioning it because she knows a lot more than she should if she's just a merchant's daughter. But I don't think he's questioning it enough to really have formed a decision about it
Okay.
yet. He definitely does figure it out that she's not being truthful because I want to say like he's been injured and he's laying in a tinker's wagon and she's tending to him and he's like, "Who is your father?" And she finally tells him the truth.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then much, much, much later in like Lord of Chaos, when he meets Davram Bashir,
Yeah.
He's like, I guess she told you that blah, blah, blah. And Perrin's like,
No,
she said you were a
no.
merchant. She said you sold ice peppers. You were a fur trader. You did this other thing too. I almost didn't marry her when I found out who she actually was or who her father was, but she wanted to get married, and who am I to say no to her? Or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
it doesn't go out exactly
Yeah,
like that. But so, I mean, he does find out like who her father is and that she's been lying. And he does kind of cotton on like, I don't know who your father is, but he's definitely not who you've been saying he is. But I think it's just a little bit too early at this point in the story. I don't think he's quite gotten there yet.
Okay. All right. Well, so it doesn't ring true. All right. Thanks.
Okay, if you guys can hear little meows and whining in the background, it's getting close to feeding time, and our cat has decided that she's done waiting. So if you hear her, please just ignore her.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. If Fail was not so, Fail, and Perrin was not Perrin, this whole newly forming relationship thing could be fun. Like sitcom level fun. Situations caused by miscommunication and people coming from different worlds can be very comical when you know that the two people actually have each other's best interest at heart. Sitcoms are fun because we know at the end of the episode, everyone will have an epiphany and realize that they've been acting foolishly. But that's not what's going on here. Fail is so possessive of Perrin that it's not actually fun when she tells him to hang with Rand. By implying that Perrin and Rand will have a lot to talk about over wine, she's basically saying that Perrin and Rand are going to talk all about Rand's sexual escapades with Berlain. And Perrin is as much at fault because he chooses to let her be mad instead of trying to talk it out. It's frustrating, and I kind of don't like it.
Okay, you can't put all the blame on Fail. Perrin is being just as possessive of her when Torian is looking at her as she is of him.
Right.
You know, I mean, in her defense, Perrin was staring at Berlain, and Fail doesn't have the benefit of wolfy senses to smell what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Fail wasn't showing Torian any interest when Perrin was rude to him for looking at her. He doesn't own her. She's just his girlfriend. Both of them spend the first half of this book acting immature and stupid, but they are both equally at fault. True,
they are. But more to my point is, like, this could be much funnier.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't it falls flat with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perrin really has a way with women, doesn't he? If one blocks his way, he just gently picks them up and moves them aside.
Yeah.
And apparently they find this charming. Leanne in The Great Hunt, and now Bane here in Shadow Rising. If Matt or Rand had tried this, and had the strength to do it, I might add, it would not work. So I don't think Jordan is trying to say that this is acceptable behavior for any man. Perrin is special because he's the gentle giant. However, just because you get away with it doesn't make it right. So, yes, I do find it mildly amusing. But I'm still kind of cringing at the situation.
I hate this. Like, it was funny once when he does it with Leanne back in The Great Hunt. Mm-hmm. It was a shock. Leanne could have channeled the power at him if she wanted.
Yeah.
And he was more of a boy back then.
Definitely.
Instead of like a big hairy man. So it felt more innocent. If it was just a one-time thing, then I'd be cool with it.
Okay.
But I'm not cool with him making a habit out of picking up women who are in his way and moving them.
Yeah.
It's not okay. Like in the last chapter, he forces Fail out of the room with one hand while she was resisting because he's just that strong. He tends to manhandle women. Obviously, he's not trying to hurt them. But just because he's a big hairy brute doesn't make this behavior okay. Like, I'm not a fan. Bane and Chad should have at least drawn a little blood, not enough to hurt him, just enough to teach him a lesson. Because the whole, this is so funny, nah, that's not the thesis. I don't like it. Not a fan.
Yeah, and part of the reason I want to mention this now is there's a pattern here.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the problem. Like I said, when it happened in The Great Hunt, I thought it was hilarious. Mostly because of the power dynamic. And like I said, Perrin was still a boy in a lot of ways. So it wasn't as threatening.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, making a habit of it, I really don't like this at all.
And we are going to have more discussions about other things that happen with Perrin in this book. Yeah. So I just want to kind of lay the foundation here of this is a pattern of behavior that Perrin actually goes, and because he feels he can, he will do things and move people and take action when he shouldn't. Yeah. Even if he thinks he's justified. So, yeah. So, Rand, finding out you're the Dragon Reborn can mess with your head, but actually fulfilling the prophecy and pulling Kalendor out of the stone would mess you up in a completely different way. Well, Rand is right that he needs to come up with a plan. The way he is fixating on how he has to do the last thing everyone expects gives us a glimpse into what Rand's mental state is. Mm-hmm. And he's not okay. Mm-mm. But I wouldn't be okay either if my reflection had just come out of a mirror and tried to kill me.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that Rand responds to Ruark saying that Berlain told him what happened with, "It seems the Lord Dragon doesn't rule Mayene." That's a good thing to remember. Even scared to death, Berlain's going to do what Berlain's going to do. I also like the relationship that Ruark develops with Berlain.
Yeah.
Like, he becomes kind of a mentor and a sort of father figure for her. And it starts in this book.
Yeah, it does.
I like it.
Every now and then I run across a line Jordan writes, and it strikes me as unique and kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, the description Piran gives us about the difference between Lan and Ruark just stuck out at me when I was reading this. It says, Piran was not sure which of the two men was more deadly, but he thought a mouse could starve on the difference. I just like it. I also like the way both Lan and Ruark totally rib Ran, playing it off as if he just cut himself shaving. Those two make a good comedy team.
Okay, so the book says, quote, and always when they met, Lan's and Ruark's icy blue stares nearly struck sparks. I didn't remember Lan and Ruark having animosity towards each other at first. Like, I could have sworn that the Ale all know who Lan is after the war, and that they have respect for him. Like, don't they even have a special name for him?
They do.
And, like, once they're in the ways, Lan and Ruark get along really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you remember there being tension between them, or is this a gaffe?
Well, I don't think the sparks that we're getting here are like animosity sparks or tension sparks. I think it's more of it's an acknowledgement.
That's not the way I read it.
Really?
Like, well, yeah, and like they're like kind of only giving each other begrudging smiles when they're ribbing Rand about the shaming thing. Like, they are not friends. Like, they do not seem to get along the way Perrin is telling it. And I really don't remember that happening.
Well, I don't necessarily think that Lan and Ruark are friends at this juncture. And the reason I say that is that Lan fought in the Ale Wars.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Not on the side of the Ale.
Obviously. But, like, they have a respect for him and what he did. You know, like, they found out who he was during the Ale War, and they saw him fight, and, you know, saw him approach everything with so much, like, bravery and honor.
Yeah.
They really, really respected him. And they respect his battle against the Shadow, you know? So luckily the war ended without, you know, any more, like, without any more Elle getting killed and then without Lan having to get killed, because I think they were gearing up for a really big battle with the Elle right before it got called off. The war got called off, you know? Not called off, but ended. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, that's, and, you know, they got his, like, nickname and all this different stuff. Like, the Ale respect Lan, even though they were fighting against him, or he was fighting against them. But, like, I don't know. I just feel like the way Jordan has Perrin describe it, with, like, sparks and them kind of, like, eyeing each other shadily and all that kind of stuff, like, it seems like tension or animosity to me.
I think what's going on here is, and you see this sometimes in, like, old samurai stories. There's this idea that just because you respect somebody doesn't mean they didn't kill someone you know.
Right.
Like, it's very likely that Lan could have taken out a clan chief or someone that was close to Ruark at some point in the last war. And being able to compartmentalize and being able to hold Lan and respect him as a warrior and as an honorable person, but at the same time also still be able to feel the grief and feel the loss and feel the pain that comes from knowing that this person probably is responsible for a number of your people being dead. Maybe that's the spark we're seeing here. Maybe it's the mutual like respect, but at the same time, there's a lot of water under this bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Although the Ale view of death is so different to everybody else that they're not the kind of people who are gonna, like, hold that against Lan.
True.
You know?
I
Like,
see what you're saying.
War is war. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just was really surprised by it because I don't remember this being an issue with any of the ale.
Okay.
But,
well, I hadn't seen it that way before, but I now I hear you describing it. It does sound like maybe there's something weird going on here.
I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much into it. But I just was wondering what your thoughts were. Lan defends Rand to Moraine a few times in this scene, which is pretty unusual. Perrin thinks that it's because Lan has been spending a lot of time teaching Rand the sword, and that's probably a lot of it. Lan has taken Rand under his wing, so he's grown attached to the kid. But more so, I think this is here to show some cracks between Lan and Moraine now that he's around Nynaeve again. As his heart opens up to her, he has a growing loyalty to her people.
Yeah.
Moraine basically says as much later on when she confronts Lan before they leave the stone.
I'm totally with you on that. Like, Perrin is missing that part of the equation.
Yeah, and this is like to help set that up.
It's really rare that we see Roark described as anything like startled. But when Lan says Taishar Manatharan, that is the description we get. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's easy for me to forget, especially at this point in the story, that the Ale are just as shocked by what's going on as everyone else. So they are stoic and so cool under pressure, but underneath their exterior, they're just as confused and lost as everyone else right now. So seeing Roark startled just reminded me that they're just as human as the other cultures that we see in the story.
I get that it's the basic theme of this book, but Moraine is going kind of hard at Rand, don't you think?
Yeah.
She's obviously angry, but she doesn't even know what happened, and she's already insulting and belittling him.
Yeah.
You know, she tells him off that if he doesn't learn to control his power, it will kill him, and then that he must teach himself. It's like, okay, great, but like, how? In one breath, she's saying, I've already told you that I can't teach you. And in the next, she's telling him to stop being so foolish and learn to use his power before he kills himself. That is in no way helpful. And Rand is just as bad.
Yeah.
He's so rude and difficult whenever she's around. They spend the entire book locked in battle, like two animals just taking chunks out of each other.
Yeah. I feel for Rand.
Yes.
And I'm in a place now where I'm starting to understand Moraine's plight. I don't feel for her as much, but I understand the plight.
Well, Moraine is right. He does need her.
Yeah.
And Rand doesn't realize that until it's way too late.
But, the best way to win someone over to your side is to
manipulate them
and
belittle
them.
him.
And
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, she goes about it in the completely wrong way. And it just... I think, is it Perrin that makes a comment? She spent so much time manipulating and, telling half-truths and playing the game of houses that she does it like in her sleep. Yeah, involuntarily. Yeah. Like, she can't help herself. It just happens. It's out of habit.
Kind of like someone else we know.
Right.
But yeah.
But it's like, this is just, it's not the way. It doesn't work with these boys. It just doesn't, And she just can't help herself. That's just the way she's designed, And
I think that's part of the difference. I mean, obviously we're alluding to Thom also like playing these games, but the difference is that I feel Thom always comes from a place of wanting to stay in the shadows. So his manipulations and his mechanisms and everything he's got going on behind the scenes, you really aren't supposed to know he's there. Mm-hmm. Moraine kind of expects people to just listen to her so she can be the puppet master, where Thom is the puppet master without you even knowing it.
Right. Well, yeah. Like, Moraine is coming from a place of power, whereas Thom is posing as a simple gleeman.
And amazing how much power you can have in that position.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like so I feel for her plight, but Rand is, gosh, he's so stubborn.
He is. Yeah. He's so stubborn and he's so frustrating.
Yeah. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm not a fan of the bubbles of evil in this story.
Oh, okay.
Like, I get that I get that it helps ramp up the suspense of the story so that there's more unpredictable things that can happen at any moment. But I think it would be more suspenseful to have this actually be the Forsaken trying either to kill Rand and his friends or, at the very least, mess with his mind. It's not necessarily lazy writing, but it's very convenient to have randomness just pop up like this. The knowledge drop at the end that Rand will have to prove himself as he who comes with the dawn was a little unexpected the first time that I read the series. Like Perrin, I assumed that he had pulled the sword from the stone, proved that he was Dragon Reborn, and now we go fight the Dark One. But now he has to prove himself to the Ale according to their prophecies as well. It's kind of like, sorry Mario, but your princess was in another castle. On the one hand, it's a little frustrating to have another hoop to jump through. On the other hand, it means he will be the king of Tyr and the head clan chief of the Ale. But at that moment, it must really suck for Perrin to realize that his friend's journey is long from over.
Well, I mean, it's not only that. Like, yeah, he wants the best for Rand, but even more, he wants everybody to stay safe.
True.
The situation in the stone is pretty tenuous. The only reason Rand got the stone in the first place was because of the Ale. The High Lords are lying, manipulating bunch of snakes who would sell out their own grandmother if it increased their standing. Perrin is thinking that if the Ale were to pack up and leave, the Tyrans would kill Rand and anyone who knows him. So, yeah, finding out that Rand's position with the Ale is not as sure as he thought makes Perrin a little uneasy.
Just a bit. Chapter 4 is called Strings, and the icon is Thom's harp.
Thom sits in his room in the servants' quarters, chosen in order to better gather information and the appearance of distance from the dragon. He is putting the finishing touches on an anonymous letter to Lady Altima and admiring his forgery of the High Lord Carleon's handwriting. Thinking of where to plant the letter for Altima's husband to find, he's interrupted by a knock on the door. It's Matt, and Thom can tell just by looking at him that something is wrong. Thom doesn't want to push, so he gets out the stones board, pretending that this was a normal visit until Matt was ready to talk. He didn't have to wait long. Matt tells him everything, finishing up by saying that he's thinking of leaving Tyr. Thom was also thinking of leaving Tyr. It was foolish of him to stay and risk his life over something that happened 15 years earlier. But that would leave Rand with no one to help but Moraine, tying even more Aes Sedai strings to him. Matt tells him that they should leave together, go somewhere where no one knows the dragon has been reborn, and live on their own terms, doing whatever they wanted with no one trying to kill them. Thom is tempted, but asks Matt why he hasn't left already. Matt talks about Moraine keeping tabs on him and all the gold to be won off the nobles, but Thom calls them out for excuses. Thom suggests that Matt might not want to desert his friend, but Matt denies it because Rand's the bloody dragon reborn. He thinks Moraine is keeping him there with the power. Every time Matt starts thinking seriously about leaving, he gets a strange feeling that something momentous is going to happen, and he comes up with another excuse to stay. Thom knows that it's not Aes Sedai work, but Tavarun pulling. He also knows that Matt doesn't want to hear it. He suggests Matt asks Nynaeve for advice, but Matt isn't in the market for a lecture. He decides he's going to leave right then and there, but Thom points out that it's the middle of the night. The morning will do. And just like that, Matt is diverted. They were all good and caught in Rand's twitching of the pattern, and Thom knows they would be better off getting away. He had to stay and help at least one of them get free of Aes Sedai. Suddenly and strangely content, he set a white stone on the board, puffing on his pipe, and launched into one of his many stories.
Our first encounter with Thom Merrilin in this book cuts right to the chase. We don't see him performing in front of a crowd in any way. Instead, we jump right to him forging a letter to orchestrate some political scheme he's working on. Because that is Thom's true superpower. He is a super spy. And it's kind of cool to see him take pride in his work. Like, moving forward in the series, we will see a lot less of Thom the Gleeman and a lot more Thom the Grey Fox. He still uses his cover as a Gleeman to get information, but he keeps a pretty low profile for an entertainer because he can't be too recognizable. I think opening with him working on this letter kind of helps establish this new function right away.
We probably won't have time to mention this later, But Thom is taking out two of Rand's biggest threats here with this letter. The note that he writes in High Lord Carleon's handwriting says, "Be wary, your husband suspects." He leaves it where Altima's husband, the High Lord Tidosian, will find it. Tidosian takes Carleon hunting and shoots him in a hunting accident. When Tidosian gets home, Altima gives him a goblet of poisoned wine. The two men led the faction that wanted to kill Rand and take Tyr back. So Thom working in the shadow is a huge help to Rand.
I really love the relationship between Matt and Thom. From the beginning, Thom always looked after Rand and Matt because he felt guilty about not doing enough for his nephew, Owen. But over the course of the books, Thom and Matt have become true friends.
Definitely.
It's the subtle things in this chapter that show us the relationship. Like where Thom notices right away something is wrong just by the look in Matt's eye and the way he carries himself. Also, when Matt needs to talk to someone, it's Thom he goes to. There's a level of trust that Matt has with Thom that he has with few other people. So it's just too bad they go separate ways in this book. I really like seeing them together.
Yeah. Thom and Matt are in the same boat, though Thom is handling it better. They're both caught up in Tavern pulling the pattern. Thom and Matt are very similar, which is probably why they get along so well. Thom wants to leave as much as Matt does. He knows it's foolish to stay, and even more foolish to get involved in scheming and pulling strings the way he's doing. But Rand desperately needs the gray fox in Tyr, so the pattern is keeping Thom where he is. And we'll see exactly what Matt describes as happening to him also happened to Thom. As soon as he falls back into accepting that he's caught in Rand's tavern web and stops thinking that it's foolish to stay, he relaxes into playing stones and telling stories.
Yep. I like that we get to see Matt through Thom's eyes. Everyone else in the story has clear assumptions about who they think Matt is. Thom's the only one who does not judge Matt as a slacker and does not see him as a person who never takes anything seriously. He likes Matt a lot. And Matt is the one who pulled him out of his self-destructive shame spiral. So he has seen that Matt is a stand-up guy. He sees a lot of himself in Matt, and it shows. And it makes a chapter that would otherwise seem like a boring recap seem fresher and a different perspective. That's it for chapters 3 and 4 of The Shadow Rising. Join us next week for chapters 5 and 6, where the Supergirls try to get answers out of captured Black Aja fugitives, and Maureen is busy playing her Aes Sedai games.
Is that like reindeer games?
Yeah, just like that.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher. We're available all over. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so more people can find us. You can tweet us at WhatPodThru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com to tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Or find our Wheel of Time Pod-Thru channel on YouTube. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do the things. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.